Somebody's raised their hand, sorry.
So, thinking beyond financial markets and lending markets, how would something like this affect systems of government, which is largely taxation by the services?
How does this affect taxation and systems of government? I don't know. What I do know is it's going to affect them. Governments will have to adapt. But that's okay, really. Keep in mind, most of the structures that we consider baked in stone or permanent fixtures of our culture are really inventions of the 20th century. You know, in-cap taxation taken out of your paycheck in advance of you receiving it, that was invented in the 1930s, 1940s, right? The idea of having a universal income tax, that's pretty new. Universal sales tax, that's pretty new. The idea of government funding through the middle class, that's pretty new too. A lot of these ideas are new, and yet governments existed before them. Governments somehow managed to tax cash. They managed to tax gold, bullion. They managed to tax all currencies that came before. I'm sure governments will figure out a way to tax Bitcoin too, but they're going to have to adapt. So certainly a lot of the power levers, a lot of the controls that are built into a currency are no longer there. To me, the most exciting is the base manipulation of the value of the currency. So for example, today, the dollar, right? For the last 5 years, the Fed has been printing $70 billion a month and handing this to the banks in the form of corporate welfare. And the banks have been taking this and increasing their balance sheet, and apparently it trickles down somewhere, but it doesn't trickle down to me or anybody I know. Now, what does that do to the value of the currency? What it does to the value of the currency, if you ask anyone who is trying to make a difficult living and support a family, it's very clear what that does. Everything is more expensive than it was 5 years ago. But inflation doesn't show that because the government has manipulated the inflation metrics to remove all of the things that regular people buy so that when those get more expensive, inflation doesn't go up. So we're really playing a shell game here where the currency is depreciating massively because of corporate welfare to the banks, and regular people get punished at the grocery checkout every time they go shopping for basic goods for their family. Meanwhile, forget the value of the education fund or the will and trust they have or whatever else they actually want to bequeath their children, that's going to be inflated to nothing, right? So that's one area of government manipulation that Bitcoin explicitly excludes by creating an algorithmic issuance of currency. I think there are going to be other algorithmic governance systems. I've seen several coins that have more political ambitions. And there are many other ways of doing this than Bitcoin. For example, Frycoin has a demurrage interest rate, which means that if you don't spend the coins, they lose value. That's the opposite of Bitcoin, and it's a different approach. I've heard of people talking about doing a proof-of-stake income redistribution coin, where basically every block, you redistribute income from the accounts that have the most coins to the accounts that have the least coins. Kind of like, minimum wage or minimum income guarantee. There's a lot of things that potentially we might see attempted as algorithmic governance, or I like to call it meta politics or cryptocurrency politics. The ability to take things that today we do with government organizations and hierarchical structures and representative democracy and replace them with a predictable deterministic algorithm. And then who decides which algorithm we use? The people who decide which coin they use. You pick the coin that has the algorithm you like, and you join a community of other people who agree on that, and let's see how your coin does. It's a free market. So it's going to create some very interesting things. It's very disruptive. But, governments adapt. They've been at it for thousands of years. They're not going anywhere. All right. Let's put their hand out for a while now. Gentleman over there, get your microphone.